Hello friends, my name is Aayush. Today I am presenting before you a beautiful case of spontaneous cure of hemorrhoids with GHK. Let us first go through the disclaimer. The information given in this presentation is for educational purposes only. Participants shall consult their medical doctors for health reasons before using anything disclosed during this presentation. Students shall not use any of the different information given in this presentation while writing their examination. Let us understand the dictionary meaning of hemorrhoids. Hemorrhoids are also known as bawasir in Hindi. As per the website learninggnm.com, hemorrhoids is swelling in the lower rectum. The photograph before you displays the dark red portion of as hemorrhoids. You can see the swelling which is coming out of the anal ring. The word origin of hemorrhoids, this comes from Latin. So it is of two words. Haima means blood and Rhine is something related to flow. The patient in this case is a 42-year-old right-handed female. This patient lives in a joint family. So she lives with her husband. There is mother-in-law and sister-in-law living with her husband in one big house. The complaint: the patient developed hemorrhoids, also known as piles, 15 days ago. Let us understand the background of this case. The patient has a troubled relationship with her sister-in-law. History of this case: the patient's mother-in-law had promised to gift gold bangles to her two daughters-in-law. 15 days back, she collected 4 bangles from the bank. Therefore, the patient was expecting to receive 2 bangles. But the mother-in-law gave all the bangles to the patient's sister-in-law, so she got nothing. When the patient came to know of this, she objected. She questioned her mother-in-law. Mummy, when you did not intend to give the bangles in the first place, why did you even make me a promise? The mother-in-law attempted to pacify her by promising that she would receive her share of bangles after former's passing. Perceiving the injustice, the patient felt a pinching and burning sensation in her rectum. At the same time, she murmured some spiritual word of wisdom which consoled her. This is an important fact which we will use later in the case. Afterwards, her rectum swelled and protruded out during defecation. This also caused her mild pain. So she got used to inserting the swelling back at the end of her defecation. Later, she came to know that this was hemorrhoids. Let us understand the GHK understanding of hemorrhoids. The organ affected in hemorrhoids is rectum surface mucosa. The embryonic germ layer affecting this organ is ectoderm, and the organ affected is rectum surface mucosa. As you can see in this photograph, the red portion, anus, is part of what is rectum surface mucosa. The red color as per GHK and GNM represents the cerebral cortex. So the brain control center of rectum surface mucosa is temporal lobe in cerebral cortex. As you can see in this photograph, the top part of the photograph shows the temporal lobes, the top view. If you can see deeply, you will see in the in the in the in the circular part, there you can see in red font rectum surface mucosa on the left bottom part of your photograph. Also important to note is that rectum surface mucosa, the control center is just above the bladder. We will use this information later on in our presentation. In this next slide, I am sharing with you the brain CT scan. This brain CT scan is not of the patient. It has received from Learning GNM website. The hammer focus in the rectum relay. You can see the two circles. The outline of these circles are represented by the two semicircles, red colored semicircles. These semicircles are hammer focus in the rectum relay and the bladder relay. If you can refer to the previous photograph where I showed you brain control centers of rectum and bladder, then you can compare the CT scan with the brain control center. The sharp borders of the hammer focus reveal that in this particular case, both the conflicts are active. So, the rectum relay is identity conflict and the bladder relay in this case is the marking conflict, territorial marking conflict. At this point, there are no symptoms since both the organs follow the outer skin sensitivity pattern. We will discuss this in our later slide. Let us understand the biological conflict which affects rectum surface mucosa. The biological conflict is either female identity conflict or male territorial anger conflict. This depends on person's gender, laterality, and hormone status. When you go and you read the first biological law out of 5 biological laws of nature, you will understand the concept of gender laterality and hormone. Now, GHK understanding. In line with evolutionary reasoning, territorial conflicts or identity conflicts, as well as sexual conflicts and separation conflicts, are associated with organs of ectodermal origin. They are controlled from the sensory, premotor sensory, and post-sensory cortex. What are the source of identity conflict? As the name itself suggests, it has to do something with identity of a person. Yes, an inability to establish one's position or place, that is one's territory, literally means physically in real life, or figuratively, that is in his perception, in his imagination. What can trigger identity conflict in a person? An unwanted move, change of school, or change of workplace. Also, feeling unsettled, not knowing where to belong, not finding one's place in a relationship, or within a family, or within a group at work, or in the culture and society at large, as well as discrimination against one's belief or sexual orientation. The conflict is, to a certain extent, a decision conflict, that is, not knowing what choice to make. or not knowing where to go. As GNM teaches us, every conflict that we face has something to do with the evolutionary roots. We are a product of 4.5 billion years of research and development by nature. So, we all contain the experiences that an organism had in the route of travel of in the evolution of all these 4.5 billion years. So, the evolutionary root of an identity conflict are marking the place or a territory with feces. You have seen dogs in your surroundings or animals in the National Geographic channel or Discovery channel. Most of them, most of these mammals, they mark their territory with their feces or urine. This program is ingrained even we as humans. Hence, the rectum related identity conflict is similar to marking conflict involving renal pelvis, ureters, bladder, and urethra. So, when you have any disease, if we call it a disease of renal pelvis, ureters, bladder, and urethra, you may take identity conflict as the main conflict affecting that person. Again, I am producing the photograph from previous slides. In the brain, the control center of the rectum and the bladder are located right next to each other. Therefore, feces marking takes urine marking to the next level. Now, two-phase biological special program. Now friends, here I would like to take a minute and tell you that in conventional medicine, we call something as a disease and act as a disease. In GHK, there is no term as disease. We call conflict. So in conventional medicine, what is called as disease, it might be the conflict active phase of a conflict or a healing phase of a conflict. Let us, in the light of the current conflict of surface mucosa, let us understand this two-phase biological special program. The SBS of rectum surface mucosa follows outer skin sensitivity pattern. So the way outer skin responds to a conflict, similar way the rectum surface mucosa will also follow, because both of them have their origin from ectoderm. So as GHK says, every SBS, that is systematic biological special program, will be in two phases. First will be conflict active phase and second will be healing phase. So what can we experience? What can we expect in case of rectum surface mucosa, or what can we expect in case of hemorrhoids in as per this two-phase program? So the patient will feel hyposensitivity during the conflict active phase and epileptoid crisis. What is epileptoid crisis? We will discuss later. And the patient will face hypersensitivity in the healing phase. In the second part of this photograph, which is marked by red color, you can see the healing phase is divided into three phases: PCLA, epileptoid crisis, and PCLB. In the next some slides, for your help, I will divide this slides into two different parts. One part would be conflict active phase and other will be healing phase. Now let us understand the conflict active phase in case of rectum surface mucosa. What will happen when rectum surface mucosa is affected? In conflict active phase, as you can see in this photograph on the right side, there would be ulceration in the epithelial lining of the rectum. This will be proportional to the degree and duration of the conflict activity. The more is the duration of conflict, the more is the intensity of conflict, the epithelial lining will ulcerate that much more. It would be proportional to the degree and duration of the conflict. Prolonged conflict will lead to ongoing tissue loss. The tissue loss will be continuous and the loss will build up more and more and more. So if the conflict is not resolved, then it would result in absolutely depletion of rectal lining, and then it would result in small tears, which is known as anal fissures, and these fissures will burst open with the passage of hard stool. So if you encounter anal fissure in a person, you can assume that the person is in conflict active phase of identity conflict. Now, what is the biological purpose of conflict active phase? Friends, again I will take a minute from your time. Conventional medicine thinks that the body somehow, the program of this body gets corrupted during the time of disease. When a body has some illness, that means the program of this body is corrupt. Some programming error has resulted in this disease. So this is what is the belief of conventional medicine. But GHK, Germanic Healing Knowledge, or GNM, German New Medicine, it believes in the nature. GHK believes that nature does not engage in nonsense. Nature cannot make any mistake. There are no programming errors in nature. Everything is a result of some cause, some program, some intelligent reaction of nature. So, what is the biological purpose of conflict active phase? See, when a person is going through an identity conflict, the anus will widen. The purpose is to ensure better removal of feces. As we understood in previous slides, the place of defecation defines one's living space and location of the individual. So the place of defecation and the volume of feces is very important for an individual, for an animal, for a mammal to mark its territory. So the anal will widen. With additional feces, the location can be defined better and identity of the animal or the mammal is emphasized. What would be the healing phase? Now, before this, I would like to tell you that the healing phase, as you can see in the right hand side of this slide, the photograph shows that the healing phase is divided into three different phases: PCLA, Epileptoid crisis, and PCLB. What happens in PCLA? When we are considering the organs which are controlled by cerebral cortex, the first phase of healing would be the tissue which were lost which were ulcerated during the conflict active phase will be replenished through cell proliferation. You can see in PCLA in this photograph, there would be pain, there would be tissue restoration, swelling, inflammation, bleeding, itching. In the bottom, I have also mentioned this is the phase when hemorrhoids will be presented. What is proctitis? Proctitis is inflammation of rectum, which is marked by bloody stools and a frequent urge to defecate. This is healing in the rectal lining accompanied by inflammation. Okay? The swelling caused by the edema presents as hemorrhoids in the lower rectum. There is internal hemorrhoid and there is external hemorrhoids, which is affecting the part of anus. So when a person has hemorrhoids, then you can assume, you know, that the person is going through healing phase, and properly the phase is PCLA, the first phase of healing. With water retention due to an active abandonment or existence conflict, also known as syndrome, hemorrhoids will become much larger. In some other presentation, you may understand abandonment or existent conflict. Now, in conventional medicine, the growth might be diagnosed as rectal cancer. But based on 5 biological laws, the new cells cannot be regarded as cancer cells, since the cell increase is in reality a replenishing process. Friends, in GHK, we understand that the cancer is actually, in the case of cerebral cortex, proliferation of cells in the organ is not cancerous, but it is healing, a part of healing process, PCLA. Okay. Healing symptoms are burning pain in the rectum, anal itching, rectal bleeding, and painful rectal muscle cramps or spasms if surrounding striated muscles of the inner rectum wall undergo the epileptoid crisis at the same time. Healing phase. Depending on the intensity of the conflict active phase, the symptoms range from mild to severe. Typical for the healing phase is the feeling of incomplete defecation, incomplete emptying of the bowels, termed as rectal tenesmus. In this slide, I have shown you the conflict active phase and healing phase separately. You should understand that the intensity of healing phase, that is the right side of your slide, the intensity and duration of the healing phase would be directly dependent upon the intensity and duration of the conflict active phase. Higher, more intense and longer the conflict active phase, higher, more intense and longer will be the healing phase. Now, epileptoid crisis. First, let us understand what is epileptoid crisis. So again, when you see in this photograph on the right side, the body creates edema in the organs which is affected, which is in healing. At the same time, edema is also created in the corresponding part of the cerebral cortex which is connected with the organ. So when the first stage of healing, PCLA, gets complete, the body needs, the organism needs to expel this edema out of the body. So the nature has a special program to do this. What is that program? That program is epileptoid crisis. For some time, the the edema or the water, which is the liquid which is accumulated during the PCL stage, it would be expelled forcefully. So this is also called urination state. All the epileptoid crises that are controlled from the sensory, post-sensory or premotor sensory cortex are accompanied by troubled circulation, dizzy spells, short disturbances of consciousness, or a complete loss of consciousness, that is fainting or absence. This depends on the intensity of the conflict. Another distinctive symptom is a drop in blood sugar caused by the excessive use of glucose by the brain cell. Now, during epileptoid crisis, for some time, the same symptoms like conflict active phase will be replayed during this epileptoid crisis. Let us understand how did I took this case as per GHK. When I met this lady, first thing I noticed that she is right-handed. She is 42 years old. That means the hemorrhoids will indicate two things. Number one, the hemorrhoids are identity conflict. And number two, that the lady is already in the healing stage of this identity conflict. Number one is identity conflict. Number two is she is already in the healing stage of identity conflict. So now the task before me was to draw a connection between her hemorrhoids and the healing of her identity conflict. So I questioned her regarding her identity. Okay, all the questions all the things that we have seen during the description of identity conflict, I used them as in my question and I sought the information from her. Then this incident of bangles came in light. So the incident before the onset of hemorrhoids, they pertain to the bangles. I asked the lady what happened before you were affected by hemorrhoids. When you first detected hemorrhoids, tell me about the incidents that happened just before the onset of hemorrhoids. So then she told me that after when my mother was partial towards my sister-in-law, and she gave all the bangles to my sister-in-law. After that, I was hurt for some time, but I consoled myself by muttering spiritual words of wisdom. So I knew that this muttering spiritual words of wisdom was something that healed her conflict, and it resulted in the healing phase, PCLA, that is hemorrhoids. So now I was able to draw connection between the episode of unjustified distribution of bangles and her healing, self-healing, which was unknown to her till this point. Now, how did I carry out the counseling of this patient? The patient was explained the two phases of SBS, of her identity conflict. The way I have expressed you the two phase, the conflict active phase and healing phase of the identity conflict, which is controlled by cerebral cortex, the same thing was shared with her. She was educated about how the evolutionary biology of rectal surface mucosa, that is marking territory with feces or urine, relates to the identity conflict. Then I draw the connection. I told her how the unfair distribution of bangles had created a question in her. What is my identity as compared to my sister-in-law? Because the mother-in-law took partiality. She stood with the sister-in-law, with the patient's sister-in-law, and gave all the bangles to the sister-in-law instead of the patient. So patient was questioning her own identity in this whole episode. Now, she was assured that she had herself healed the conflict and that the hemorrhoids would go by themselves. What was the result? This meeting ended cheerfully. The patient was in awe of this discovery. She was surprised that how an episode of gold bangles could create a physical change in her. Her hemorrhoids healed spontaneously after our meeting, and the swelling dissipated in a couple of days. I had a talk with her after a couple of days of this whole meeting, and she told me that surprisingly and miraculously, the hemorrhoids have healed. And today, after 1.5 years, the hemorrhoids have not reappeared. So this case was spontaneous. The healing was spontaneous. The moment she understood the connection between the bangles and how she healed her identity conflict, she was completely convinced that this is what has happened in her. As a result, the hemorrhoids were healed at that moment. They began healing at that moment. Now, thank you so much. I would like to end my presentation with gratitude to Dr. Hamer for this groundbreaking medical discovery that has freed humanity from the fear of diseases. I will also give credit for all the scientific images I have used in this presentation, and the knowledge of GNM has been copied from learninggnm.com. I would also like to thank my mentor, Dr. Verghese, and the team of Global GNM for spreading this knowledge to the world. For more information, you can follow the link globalgnm.com. Thank you and bye.